Yeah.
Hi there, it's great to have you with us today, joining us for what is going to be a really, really interesting chat. I'm not feeling sure about you, but even though it's a Monday, it feels like a Friday to me completely. But the sun is out, so fingers crossed it's going to be a good day. One thing we're all really passionate about is trying to get together and start doing live performances again. And some people are able to do that a little bit sooner, and we're starting to see in the UK performances and musicians come together, which is absolutely fantastic. So, one of the most amazing performances I've seen during lockdown has been by the London Mozart Players, who have been able to come together and perform live last week and are doing a short series of concerts coming up. So I'd love to introduce you to Julia De Brule and also Ruth Rodgers from the London Mozart Players. How are you both doing?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Yes, well.
Fantastic. And it must be odd for you to actually then be seeing each other on a screen again rather than in person, which was obviously what you were doing last week.
Oh, it is a bit strange. It feels like a step backwards now, having actually seen my colleagues in person, which was just about the most exciting thing ever. It really was.
Oh, fantastic. One thing I do with these podcasts to start off with, which is what I frame as being a really interesting way of getting an insight as to how you define yourself, but as also me being slightly lazy and avoiding introducing you properly, is asking you to introduce yourselves and say who you are and what it is that you do in the world and how you define yourself. So, Ruth, would you like to go first?
Certainly. So I'm Ruth Rodgers, and I'm lucky enough to be one of the leaders of the London Mozart Players. That is in a kind of freelance capacity, but I do lots of other lovely things as well. I play in a piano trio and sort of guest lead in other places, and I'm involved with lots of the artistic decisions for the orchestra, do some directing and lots of chamber music. So I'm very lucky that nobody's ever said last. But if you ask me how to define myself, I'd say I'm the mother of two very energetic boys. And right now with homeschooling, it's pretty all embracing.
Certainly, I'm very wouldn't envy you in the slightest with the whole multitasking challenge that comes ahead during lockdown. It must be trying to sort of look forward to September and schools coming back properly full time, fingers crossed, or something in those elements, just for a bit of free time.
Yeah, indeed.
Certainly. And Julia, how about yourself? How would you define yourself within the context of the London Mozart Players?
Well, I've been with the orchestra for 30 years as a co-principal cellist, and it's an orchestra that I absolutely love, and I've really sold my whole heart and soul to. And 5 years ago, I found myself in the extraordinary position of being asked to be the executive director of the orchestra because we took over the running of it ourselves. And it's just been the most incredible journey we've been on. And there's no hierarchy in this orchestra. The orchestra is run by its players through and through. So we have a board of directors, and I'm one of the directors as well. And when I sit in my seat in the orchestra, I'm just a jobbing cellist, and the rest of the time I work very hard behind a computer and meeting people, and just trying to create things that we can all really enjoy and love doing.
Certainly, it's fantastic, and it's I think a real breath of fresh air to hear musicians who are also in positions of administration as well, and you actually get to have a bit more of an insight, which probably helps your role as well, which is fantastic. Well, obviously, lockdown has affected all of us quite a lot in the music world. But what would life look like normally for you before lockdown, both for the London Mozart Players and also within your other roles as well?
Well, I'll answer first. I mean, we had just about the busiest season ahead of us that we could have planned with a really big tour with Jess Gillum, with a QEH and a Fairfield Halls concert, and then touring around the Southeast. Just so many recordings and concerts. And literally overnight, they just collapsed. And at first, they just collapsed until July. And we thought, okay, we'll get to grips with what happens in the autumn. And now, one by one, things in the autumn are becoming less possible. However, we're not going to just give up hope on those because things are changing very, very quickly. And so we are just keeping certain things in the diary so that we might be able to find some way that we might be able to move forward with them. But it is a very changed scene. And actually, you have a choice, don't you? You can give in or you can just find an opportunity in a situation. And I think that's perhaps one of the hallmarks of the LMP is we find an opportunity even when things look really fairly grim, and we find a way to make it work. So I don't know about Ruth.
Yes, and I would have been rushing around, as Julia says, so many dates in the diary, would have been rushing from pillar to post, and meanwhile trying to make sure everybody's okay at home, learning lots of new repertoire, planning programs, lots of directing. So we do lots of concerts with no conductors, and that takes an awful lot of preparation, as I'm sure you're aware. So yeah, it was extraordinary to have the horizon so changed. There were lots of good things about it, and I believe lots of really good things will have come out of this. But yes, it's definitely been a big adjustment, and I sort of feel like you just have to take each day as it comes. You can't really think too far ahead, otherwise it's rather confusing, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, very much so. And it's especially when the landscape changes so quickly and the guidance, or you're not entirely sure what the world's going to be like the next week. It's quite a tumultuous time. So I think it's, taking each week as it comes is a really good mentality for that. So for the London Mozart Players, what has lockdown looked like before this new concert series that we'll get onto in a second? How has it been for the musicians, and what have you all been up to during this time?
Well, actually, I think it's been an incredibly creative time. So by the 23rd of March, we had our online content up and running with new things every single day of the week, from family provision to live streamed concerts to exploring music, blogs, the whole lot. And we were just really fortunate because we seem to have lots of friends all around the place, and people have been so incredibly generous with their time and with their performance and everything, and have really helped to make what I think has been a really incredible offering. It was only ever going to be for those 12 weeks, though, because I'm very well aware of the tolerance of audiences and of people, and it was a reaction to needing somehow to be creative and to still keep active, and also to look after our audience. So that's what we've been doing, and it's challenged us all in incredible ways. We've learned skills that we could never have thought that we could have found from anywhere. And perhaps from my point of view, it's incredible to look at the orchestra and see the creative energy and talent that there is in there. And we have to take that forward and actually allow those people to have that space to be creatively active and help forming our decisions and having opportunities to lead things in ways they have been doing during lockdown time.
Certainly.
Yes, and I would, sorry to interrupt.
No, after you.
I would just add to just endorse what Julia's just said, that not only have I feel I've learnt about some amazing capabilities of our members that I had no idea about, but also I think it really shows how, we are a player-run orchestra, as you're hearing. We are a team, and I feel that everybody's contributed and everybody's had something to say or some brilliant idea, or I had no idea the talents of how some people have just actually put things together. So I think it's been this incredible team spirit and incredible kind of this ship will not sink, this ship will set sail, in a slightly different way for a while, but that we're a glorious vessel on our voyage, and nothing's going to stop us.
Certainly. And am I right in thinking you said the 23rd of March is when you got everything online?
We did.
So that was
the
first week of proper lockdown. Because that's an incredibly fast speed to move at. Because I know that a few orchestras managed to get moving that quickly, but not the vast majority of that. It's a huge achievement. What drove you to get moving so quickly, and how did you manage to get everything online that fast?
Well, actually, in the few days before lockdown, a very generous fund of ours gave us some money and said, if you want to start recording some things over these next few days before they actually lock you down, you could. It just wasn't time. And so I just said to the team, okay, we need to be online on Monday. Can we put together a program of activity? And within hours, we had titles for every day. And the first 2 weeks were filled with wonderful content that we could use. So we just got it off really, really quickly. And I think it was essential that we did. And we're a small organisation, and if you're small, you can be really nimble. You can turn things around. You don't have this massive war horse behind you that you have to, turn in the right direction. We could just do it, and we did.
Certainly, and imagine you have to develop a lot of skills during that time as well. So, Ruth, what did you manage to learn through now having to do all this digital online work? I imagine there's so much more than you probably ever knew that you had to know before this all started.
Yeah, well, the Facebook Live recital was interesting. It was fine for all the slow stuff. By the time we got to Montechardas, it was kind of by the skin of our teeth. But we did, it was myself and a pianist from completely different parts of the country. So that was fun and interesting. And I kind of quite like living a bit on the edge, and I love a challenge, and I love a little bit of danger in my life. It's pretty good. But yes, I think I did breathe quite a sigh of relief when that one was done. But I've had great fun interviewing some wonderful people. I've chatted to Nicola Benedetti and Michael Collins and Howard Shelley. And it's lovely. It's lovely when people have the time to actually talk to you, because these are people that, are incredibly busy normally, but actually they're like everybody else. They're at home and they're delighted to have a chat with you and tell them a bit about their very interesting lives. So that's been fascinating. But yes, I've, like everybody else, I've had to learn how to use the camera and the microphone and Zoom and all the rest of it. And I would say that I do find it quite hard. That there's going to be an audience, but it is hard not having that immediate response. And last week I recorded a little concert of violin duets, and and every time you finish a piece, nothing happens, of course. And even if people are roaring with delight in their living rooms, if we should be so lucky, you don't feel that, and it makes you aware of how important a live audience is, in my humble opinion.
Totally. You do get that sort of almost awkward silence moment, which is quite tricky. And you think, oh, what is it good? Are people liking us? Have they switched off? I, for the first time, actually managed to see some of the football coverage that's come back to sort of try and see how they're presenting their sport and things. I noticed that they're pumping in pre-recorded audience sounds and it reacts to what happens in the sport. So at one point they were booing what had happened on the pitch. Maybe we don't need a boo button, but maybe some sort of applause button that gets feedback to musicians might be quite a nice way of getting something back to us.
We had that if we had that intake of breath noise, that kind of, when you do really tricky virtuosic passage, that would be good, wouldn't it?
Oh, certainly. Brilliant, fully interactive digital audience would be great. Well, one of the things I think is absolutely fantastic you've done is you're one of the first people to come back and start experimenting with live performances as an ensemble. And that kicked off last week with a performance at Westfield Centre in London. And you were all socially distanced, 2 meters away from each other, and also putting it out onto, was it just Facebook Live, but also other places on the internet as well?
So we actually partnered with Classic FM, so it went out on their Facebook, their YouTube, our YouTube channel, and all our various other ones, Facebook and things. So I think it actually hit just on Classic FM 750,000 people within about 2 days. So it's an audience that we couldn't have dreamed of before, which was really wonderful.
Certainly, it shows the potential power and potential for consuming classical music online. And one thing that I always keep coming back to is that with online streaming, classical music is one of the fastest growing genres, and the appetite for young people consuming it is always quantified, and it's always something that's really important. So we actually have this great potential audience we can reach and connect, which is hopefully something great for the future. And I think also as well the achievement of reaching that many people is something really spectacular, and it's not just because Classic FM have a very large following. Some of their live streams don't get that much of a viewing. So obviously something that you were doing really was resonating with people. And I think the visuals of the performance were really striking, not just the big, gorgeous scenery of Westfield Shopping Centre and this gorgeous glass roof, but also the fact that it was very striking to see you all separated, but also wearing face masks that were all colour-coded and on brand. It really was something quite special. Ruth, what did it feel like playing together for the first time after, what would be 3 months since you last saw each other?
I'm going to have to be totally honest here. The London Mozart Players has 2 leaders, and Simon Blendis led and directed that particular performance. So I have not yet seen all my lovely colleagues, but I watched it, trying not to go a slight shade of green with envy. But I will be at the next one. But yeah, I was very proud of them all, and I agree. I thought it looked amazing. I thought the red masks were just an amazing touch.
Very much so.
But sadly, I wasn't there myself.
I had a real battle with all the players because obviously nobody wanted to wear masks, but we were in a public space on the day that it was made law that you had to wear them, when you travel. So we had no option. And I actually thought that it will give it a place in history. When you watch that video, you won't be able to forget that all happened during this terrible time. So.
No, certainly you're right. And I think at the moment, in the digital world we live in, people are very quick to jump on things when they see people who aren't socially distancing properly or potentially may not be following the guidelines. I think it partly avoids any negative repercussions. But as you say, it's creating music in our time, for our time, and it's really going to benchmark it that you are separated from people, but also you're very visually. I think being separate doesn't really hit home the pandemic, but face masks do in a slightly different way. And that's something that really is obviously going to hit that home. Did you find it difficult to play in a face mask at all?
There were lots of things about that day that were really difficult. It was absolutely boiling hot in that shopping centre because the glass was streaming in through that, the sun was streaming in through the glass roof. But one of the things that actually I hadn't quite thought about is you couldn't see people's facial expressions. You could see their eyes. And yes, you can tell if people's eyes are smiling, but we do so much communication between us by looking at each other and seeing, when you get a smile, it's so lovely. And we didn't have that. So that was tricky as well. Actually, we had to sort of, whenever we could take a surreptitious sort of quick breath from underneath our mask, we all did, because it was really quite hard playing with them on.
Certainly,
I'm curious as well. I'm just curious because obviously there was no conductor, and I think that when either Simon or I lead the orchestra with no conductor, a lot of what we show in terms of what we're trying to convey is through our facial expressions. So I'm fascinated, whether that's a bit of a hindrance having the mask on or not. Are you able to do it all with your eyes, do you think? I don't know.
We worked extra hard. We really did, to make sure we could do it. But everybody still moved in the same way. It was odd not being close enough to sort of feel the vibrations of somebody else's instrument, though. But we got used to it. Surprisingly, we really got used to it.
Mm. Certainly, and I'm really intrigued as well. We had a question come in from Facebook from Alistair Hogarth, who was asking what the atmosphere was like in the shopping centre. I know it was the first day that shopping was open in the UK. Were there people there as well, or did you have the whole place to yourself? What was it like for that?
Yeah, the time of day we did it meant that we had most of the place to ourselves. People were wandering by, but it was the sort of very beginnings of everything.
Certainly, and so what did that feel like for the atmosphere of being in this giant empty shopping centre?
It was like being let out, actually, because if you think about it, if you're meeting socially, that was with half a dozen people. Here we were in this space, and actually there were a dozen of us all playing together. So it was really exhilarating, and it actually, those 3 months of not playing all just sort of disappeared. And actually, it could have been yesterday we'd just given our last concert. It felt like coming home.
Certainly, and this is the first of 3 performances that you're doing during this little mini concert series of being socially distanced. Following on from Ruth's question about how you managed to sort of communicate without these facial expressions and the difficulty, what have you learnt from this performing experience that you're going to try and implement in how you communicate as an ensemble next time around? Oh, and also, Ruth, are you involved in this next one?
Yes, I am. Perfect. And I can't wait.
Our problem with this next concert is that we are almost twice the size. So we wanted to do a concert that involved all the string players of the orchestra, because actually everybody just can't wait to be part of what's going on. And given that there's real issues around wind and brass players, we thought, well, if we can do something for all the strings, wouldn't that be wonderful? And the programme we're playing really lends itself to that, because it's sort of real big string pieces like the Grieg Holberg, and also with Tasman Little doing the Lark Ascending. So it would be perfect having that size. We've already been down to the venue to have a look at it, so we can measure out very carefully where we all sit, so we can get as close as we can, but become absolutely completely 2 meters apart in every direction.
Yes, I imagine it's certainly going to be tricky for the planning side of things, of trying to work out what sort of potentially just how many musicians you can have in a space. As from my experience of being a cellist, sometimes you're sat very perilously close to the edge of a stage at the best of times, when it's you're sat really close to your contemporaries and your fellow musicians, and you're crammed into the same place. So it's going to be very difficult for planning going forward, I imagine. So what are your additional plans for going forward? You have this concert season. Are there anything else that you're doing during this time as well as your digital content? What other things have you potentially got going on?
Well, actually, the next thing that we have just launched, which actually I think is really appropriate for this time, is something called LMP Reach. And this is, in fact, what Ruth was talking about when she recorded with another violinist the other day. And this is to take music into residential homes and to all of those isolated people with carers who just cannot get out to hear things or be part of things or welcome into their residential homes as a live event. So we've had some very generous donors and patrons who have paid for us to do this, and we're recording these little 30-minute concerts in pairs from the orchestra. So it does two things. It gives the players some work, and it gives us a chance to really keep our relationships going with all people in the community, which is such a crucial part of what we do.
Certainly. And for you, Ruth, how has it felt to then still be able to have this element of communication, but also to be able to continue as an artist? Because I know that some of my friends and contemporaries they're currently unable to work or perform, and I know that sometimes that then means that they're not feeling creative, and that's almost taken away from them. How has it felt for you being able to continue like this?
Oh, absolutely amazing. I mean, I felt so grateful. I felt so happy, driving towards the church where we recorded and seeing a dear friend. And, obviously we had to rehearse together and just to play music, with a real live human being, not through a screen, not through headphones, not having to stick to any click track or anything. I felt that we could have done anything and we would have followed each other, and obviously that's exactly how music should be. So I feel very privileged, and I was talking to somebody who said to me, but you're so lucky to have a job. And I think of the LMP as very much a freelance band, but actually in this very difficult time I realized that they're right. I'm so lucky to be associated with this particular orchestra, because it's given me an absolute sense of purpose and a sense of belonging, and it's amazing to be part of something and knowing that they're all working so hard, as Julia says, to give us work and to reach people in the community. And to think, if you are someone who's been stuck at home for the last 3 months, unable to even go out for a stroll or to the shops or anything, gosh, if this brings them a little bit of joy and puts a bit of a smile on their face, then what an amazing thing, because it certainly put a smile on our faces. So if it puts a smile on a few other faces as well, then what an incredible gift.
Massively. And I think not just the incredible reaction for the Classic FM performance, but also I can certainly imagine going in and having those very personal connections of being in different homes and various bits. It's going to have that personal connection, and also a connection you may not necessarily be able to get on the stage as well, that you are actually going into people's homes in a way that you wouldn't normally be able to, which is something very incredible. And it's really interesting seeing some of the comments coming up at the moment. Anthony Harding's watching from Nova Scotia, and he saw the concert from the Westfield Centre. So you've obviously managed to connect to people around the world, which is fantastic. One thing he's also asked as well is about the issue of wind instruments, and obviously you've mentioned you're trying to include string players going forwards. How are you able to include wind players during the future, and does sort of the air passing through the instruments change things? I know that there's various different guidelines around the world as to what this potentially could be. How are you adapting as an organisation to potentially including the wind and brass in future?
Well, we're really hoping that from September onwards that we will be able to include the wind and brass, even if they have to be socially distanced, as it's been suggested at the moment. And actually, the ABO are working very hard on our behalf to sort of try and negotiate something that can really work for us. But we are hoping that actually from September onwards, we will be able to introduce wind and brass into our concerts. I mean, a lot of obviously, because of the repertoire we play, we can do concerts with actually only 4 wind players, and that's enough, as well as the strings, and it opens up that whole bigger program of music we can play. So we will just have to be that really flexible ensemble and have to react really quickly to what we are allowed to do. Our poor wind and brass players, I feel really guilty that they can't be involved in these concerts, but they can't be at the moment, and we'll just have to wait and see what we're allowed to do. But we're ready to go.
Certainly. Well,
I did hear that horn players are going to have their own buckets and take their discarded saliva home with them.
Goodness. It's almost like chemical waste or something that you've got to go and get rid of responsibly somewhere. It's an incredible challenge, but I guess if you think of potentially any repertoire with offstage horns, you could just have one of them in various different fields further away from you. It's going to be a hell of a challenge. One thing that came up in my talk with the Royal Scottish National Orchestra is one thing that's been taken away from orchestras isn't just performing, it's also the community that you have as professionals. Ruth, how has it been not being able to see your colleagues for 3 months in effect, and how have you managed to sort of stay in contact and maintain that level of community?
Yeah, well, endless Zoom meetings and phone conversations and emails. Yes, have very much kept in touch with everyone. But of course, I miss the face-to-face thing, and I think people find it really hard not to hug each other when they see each other. You know, it's musicians are close and they're friendly, and it's going to be really hard when I see you all for our next concert that I won't be able to hug you. But yeah, I think we all know that we're still close, and we've had a couple of Zoom meetings with the whole orchestra, which is quite funny. Everyone becomes slightly subdued because no one knows if they should talk or not. You know, there's sort of so many people on the screen. You sort of feel, just more subdued than you normally are. But lovely to see everyone's smiling faces. And when you mentioned about communities, I thought you might have been about to say what I found amazing was the whole NHS, you know, playing to thank the NHS, and how people have stepped out of their front doors and played to their very, very local communities, and that suddenly your next door neighbours know what you do, what you didn't before. And there's something rather special about that, in my opinion. It's brought little local communities a bit closer together, perhaps.
Very much so. I've been seeing Guy Johnson going and playing in a small gazebo outside his local pub as a meeting area. I know Catherine Arledge has been playing outside there in the street in her home, and there's various sort of neighbours who didn't really know what was going on before that. So it's getting music out in a way that wasn't before. Just another question from Alistair Hogarth, who asks if the connection has grown stronger since isolation has been enforced between the orchestra members.
I think it definitely has. I think because everybody's played such a big part and their whole concentration has been on, you know, their playing work has been with LMP, I think it's grown much stronger. And as I sort of touched on it earlier, the fact that so many people have sort of come out of their shell and offered their talents which can be used, it can only strengthen our orchestra going forward.
Yes, there's a sort of newfound respect for our colleagues, I think. Yeah.
Massively. Has there been any sort of undiscovered talents that you've now found that have completely surprised you and you weren't expecting?
Some people have the most incredible filming skills. They really have. I mean, one of our players, Vicki Sales, one of the violins, she put together the most incredible video. It's really worth watching, along with her other half, who is a West End guitarist. And it was such a creative video with so much imagination that actually she's now become a member on our new team called LMP Digital, which is working to sort of do things in the future, because she just showed she got so much potential there. I think, Ruth, you're on it as well, aren't you?
I am indeed, yes. But I agree, Vicky's contribution was outstanding. I think she should be the sort of cinematic director of the orchestra.
Now made a new job for herself.
Yeah, exactly.
Incredible. Well, today's also another exciting day. I believe you have a new announcement of another project you're doing during lockdown, which I received a press release for today, so I'm assuming we can talk about, which is is that a nodding yes I can talk about? Yes.
Indeed.
Goodness, before I completely put my foot in it. So you're now doing a special lockdown version of Peter and the Wolf as well. And I'm right in thinking you've done some of the filming with objects from around your house, as far as I recall rightly.
Well, it's a culmination of everything that happened with At Home with LMP. So I think it just sort of will show everything that's been learnt over the last 3 months. It's brought together all the orchestra, having to put together really elaborate videos and that have all been led by this brilliant chap, Tim Henty. And as it involved not only the orchestral members, but sort of friends of the orchestra in sort of acting roles. And Alexander Armstrong, who's so generously agreed to narrate Peter and the Wolf, as well as a fantastic artist who's actually the author of one of our team, who's painted all the pictures for Peter and the Wolf, and my daughter is actually one of the marketing managers, and she's animated them all. So I think all in all, it's going to be a fantastic presentation and a real culmination of what we've been doing. So that goes out on the 27th, which is a Saturday. So hopefully lots of families will be at home in the morning and they will turn on and watch us. So hopefully.
Fantastic.
And I'm so excited about it. My eldest son is playing the part of Peter, and our relatively new kitten is playing the part of the cat.
Oh, in that
so
case, I'm certain that's going to be sort of internet gold. Anything with cats always does well. Fantastic. So I imagine as well this is a way of engaging and allowing for your community to be involved in part of the art process as well, which is quite unusual. So normally you wouldn't be able to have various family members or cats involved in doing performances. This is a new way of potentially connecting to people.
It is, but in actual fact, as the resident orchestra at St John's Upper Nord, we really do communicate with the community and work with them, and lots of them do perform alongside us, but we haven't had livestock as yet, so that is a first.
You're calling my kitten livestock?
No, not really. Not really.
Much more adult. Well, it could be official mascot going forwards.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, before we finish up, I'm sure there's lots of lessons learned you've adapted so well during this period. When things finally return to normality, are you going to be keeping on with some of these digital lessons that you've learned? And is it something that you're wanting to develop, even though that you're able to carry on as you were before?
Well, David, actually, I have to say, having read your article, which was absolutely spot on all the way along the line about, where we've come from and where we're going to, if we didn't learn the lessons from this time in life, it would be a completely missed opportunity. And so many of us have been so behind in our offering on all sorts of different platforms that honestly, if we want a real future as a vibrant orchestra that's alive and busy, we have to have an offering on all different sorts of platforms. And that is one of the biggest lessons that we will take forward.
Fantastic. And Ruth, yourself, are you wanting to carry on with some of these new digital skills that you've developed over this time going forward? Maybe without the awkward silence with no applause after performing, but some of the other elements as well.
Yes, no, definitely. I think, as Julia says, I think it's the future, and also she says the sheer number of people that are now getting to know us as an orchestra. That's a fantastic thing, and or people, as we've also mentioned, that wouldn't be able to get to concerts. If we can bring concerts to people who can't get to them, that's a remarkable thing. I still believe that nothing beats the whole live experience. And I think that something special will happen in the music industry, because I think that musicians will be genuinely so happy to perform, and I think audiences will be so genuinely so happy to listen, that is going to be a real, a really, really special thing. Not that we weren't before, but I just feel like there'll never be complacency. We'll never take anything for granted ever again, and that's got to be a good thing.
Very much so. And as you say, it's not that we're necessarily taking it for granted in effect, but it's the sort of element that you turn up, there's an audience there, you smile, you nod, you do your performance, and you go home again, which is, as you say, it's almost a luxury, and it's something that we're going forward is going to be very, very appreciative of. I think it's
yeah. Can I just say on that, because I feel this is really, really important, that actually it's made us realise. We did realise it before, but even more so now, the part the audience plays in a performance. And it really is a shared experience. And when they are not there, only half of it is happening. And that is the honest truth. And lots of our concerts we do, we really know lots of our audience. And that they are part of our performance. And I just can't wait to get back to doing that again.
I agree, totally.
Very much so. Is the audience side of it the thing that you're looking forward to most when you get back to performances? Is that the thing that you're really, is the thing you're most looking forward to?
Just the whole experience, the whole sound. When you record these things at home on your own, often just to a bare skeletal thing, and then it's all going to get filled out. For example, Peter and the Wolf. When you sit down and play Peter and the Wolf with everybody there all at the same time, the sound, the combination of instruments, all the vibrations and the smiles without the face masks and the eye contact and the connections and the audience. For me, it's everything. It's all encompassing. But I agree with Julia that it's good for us to realize just how important the audience is.
Totally. It's yeah, I can't even begin to sort of fathom what the first concert's going to actually feel like, or what they're going to be. That atmosphere in the very first one, it seems to me to be very truly special. So before we finish up, obviously you're doing so much online at the moment, and you've got your concerts coming up, and also Peter and the Wolf. If people are watching this or listening back to it, and they want to come and see what it is that you've been doing in lockdown and these future performances, where can they find you online?
They just go to our website. So just look up www.London Mozart Players, and they'll find it all there.
Absolutely fantastic. And all the social links are on the page as well. I'll link them all in the show notes as well. Well, thank you both so much for being here. It's been really, really fascinating to talk to you both. And also huge congratulations on what is a huge achievement for one, not just moving incredibly quickly at the beginning of this, but two, finding new ways to connect to people at home, and also the achievements of your first performance being socially distanced. And Ruth, I hope you really enjoy your first performance back next week. Is it next week?
Thank you. Yes, I know I will. I know I will. But thank you, and thank you for having us both. We've really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure. Well, if you're wanting to listen back or watch back any of the other episodes and interviews, all of those are on the website, which is david-taylor.org. Thank you very much for being with us, and fingers crossed to see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.